Welcome back, everybody, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki, and this is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. And today, it's a big one that I have been excited for a long time. Episode 68, where we are talking Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts. What did I say last week, guys? We have been getting better movies every week. Actually, well, Sinners was amazing. Then we moved on to The Accountant 2, which I really liked, and Thunderbolts blew me away this week. I cannot wait to talk all about it with you guys today. I hope you are all doing well. I'm in such a good mood. It's funny that we're going to be talking about a movie that's all about mental health today, and I feel like my mental health has just been so much better the last couple weeks since I started a new job. I don't know, it's just, you feel so much more fulfilled when you have something to do every day. This movie kind of hit me at the perfect time. We're on a good streak of 3 weeks in a row with great movies. Also this week, not only am I in a great mood because I am working again, but I put my YouTube video out on Wednesday, which was all about my favorite TV shows of 2025 so far. Find it on the YouTube channel. If you're not on there already listening to this on the YouTube, then go into the link on any of the podcast streamers. You'll find my YouTube link. Like, subscribe, comment what you're watching TV show wise, because today we are also going to talk about some very good TV shows in the What Else I Watch section. Also, as I say every week, timestamps below. If you only want to listen to the non-spoiler section of Thunderbolts, where I am making sure I am not spoiling anything, I promise you I'm keeping it super precise because it's just great going in, kind of only seeing the trailers, I guess. But before we get to Thunderbolts, let's jump into the news. All right, well, there was drama galore surrounding Sergeant Rock, which allegedly Deadline reported and The Wrap both reported that it was just entirely canceled. Some other places have reported that it is simply moving to the summer of 2026 instead of this year. It's halted pre-production and it's looking for a next year startup, because I think it wasn't canceled because it wasn't going to be a good movie. It was canceled or simply moved. I don't want to say canceled because I still think it's going to happen. Moved to next year because pre-production would have been really rushed to get everything off the ground and ready for a summer shoot this year. They did have a few cast members released that were allegedly in the line ready to film this summer, but I'll get into that in a second. What I think is important here is this is a very good indication from DC Studios that they are willing to move projects that simply aren't ready. I mean, they did it with the Batman Part 2. They've done it multiple times already, obviously, but now with Sergeant Rock, a movie that I think very many people are curious because it is Luca Guadagnino, who we're going to talk about in What Else I Watched today. But I don't know, I think it's an interesting property that they could do a lot with, and the fact that he showed up in Creature Commandos means he is in the universe. So I'm excited for this, and I'm glad they're giving it the time that it deserves. I mean, when you think about it in the long run, a year difference won't really matter, especially because I don't think this movie is going to have a lot of overall shared universe issues that it needs to sort out in its story. And we're going to talk about Marvel and the COVID and strike issues and how that affects the overall universe, and maybe why some projects really look cheap and aren't that good and feel rushed and unfinished, but they have to stay on a timeline because, oh, well, this movie implicates this movie, versus I don't think we'll really have that from DC Studios. I think, yes, there are going to be crossover things. I'm sure there's going to be a post-credit scene in the Superman movie this summer that's going to be Green Lanterns, or it's going to be Peacemaker, and we already know Rick Flag Sr. is moving from project to project. So obviously there's going to be crossover things, but I don't think moving Sergeant Rock by 1 year is going to really do anything. And it is interesting that it's starring Colin Farrell because he is obviously Penguin in the Batman. I'm not sure that's necessarily a clarification that the Batman would never be a part, or Robert Pattinson could never be the DCU's Batman. I think that simply means that because Colin Farrell's under so many prosthetics, maybe you can kind of get away with it and have him as both of these characters. I don't know, it seems like an interesting idea. But anyways, they did have some cast members that were allegedly attached. Let me try and find them here. So we had David Johnson from Alien Romulus. If you remember, he played the android robot guy, human replicant, whatever. Fantastic actor. I'm so curious what his role was, as well as Mike Faist from Challengers, West Side Story, The Bike Riders. That's a stellar cast of Colin Farrell, David Johnson, and Mike Faist. That's a fun crew. I'm guessing all three of them would have been soldiers, obviously, because it was going to be a World War II military movie. And I can't remember, someone maybe said there's a rumor of what the story was online, but I don't think I remembered it, or I didn't take it with that much authenticity. But look, 1 year, bottom line for me, 1 year is not really going to do a lot. It's okay. I would rather that he works on a project, Luca Guadagnino, that he is ready for. Like, apparently he's moving ahead with the American Psycho remake, or the new adaptation, not a remake, but it's another adaptation of the book. And that's instead going to film this summer or go into production now, and then he'll come back to Sergeant Rock next year. So I don't think it's that big of a deal, but let's move into the next story. Guy Ritchie is to direct Roadhouse 2 with Jake Gyllenhaal. So Roadhouse 2 marks the third collaboration between Ritchie and Gyllenhaal, and their second for Amazon MGM Studios, because he made that movie The Covenant a couple of years ago, maybe 2 years ago or 1 year ago. I think it was 2 years ago. I never saw it. I don't know why. I'm just not a big Guy Ritchie fan. Everything I watch of his, I'm just not that really blown away by. Did he do that movie, The Ministry of Gentleman Warfare? Let me see. I'm going to Google it quickly. Ministry. Yeah, Guy Ritchie. So he does like 3 movies a year, and I find that his stories aren't really anything to chew on. Having said that, I didn't hate the first Roadhouse movie. I thought including Conor McGregor was a really strange choice considering who he is and what he is doing with his life. I didn't think it was the worst movie I've ever seen. I thought Gyllenhaal was kind of fun in it. I mean, you can never really replace Patrick Swayze, but it was a fun like B movie that I sort of wished we got in theaters. It would have been fun to see that in theaters. I did an episode on it if you want to go back and listen to that. I think we did Roadhouse and Ricky Stenicki, or Roadhouse and Love Lies Bleeding that weekend. Actually kind of surprised that they are doing a sequel in general. But as for the script, it's being written by Will Beall, who did Bad Boys, Ride or Die, and Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. I think that's a really good move, because both of those movies are good like legacy sequels, or I guess just direct sequels actually. Bad Boys, Ride or Die, definitely not a legacy sequel, but both of those are very strong sequels in general for beloved franchises. So I'm actually not totally opposed to this idea. I just think Guy Ritchie isn't a very interesting director for this. I don't really like a lot of Guy Ritchie stuff. Maybe I just need to watch more of his things. Like he had the show The Gentleman, but all of his stuff is just kind of the same, like these British heist movies to me of, oh, we gotta get the down of how you do, yeah. You know, like that SNL sketch with Fred Armisen and Bill Hader where they're doing the British drama that nobody can understand. It's oh, what get what you know. That's every Guy Ritchie film to me. So whatever. I'm assuming this will probably come out next year or 2027, probably end of next year. Moving on. MoviePass is officially starting a fantasy sports league for movies, and it's like a fantasy box office app, and it's going to allow users to compete on box office results, per screen averages, sentiment score, awards, and more. So the company behind the subscription service is launching a fantasy gaming platform called Mogul, in which users can compete in tournaments, head-to-head matchups, and solo challenges in which they predict box office results. Oh my god, I hate this. Why are we turning everything into gambling? Like, this is my biggest complaint, because I do watch a lot of sports, obviously. Soccer, in the European leagues at least, the betting ads and all the betting stuff isn't as bad as North America, I would say, but in North America, like watching the hockey playoffs right now, the Stanley Cup playoffs, oh my god, every single team is sponsored by some betting agency. Every commercial is sports betting. Every segment of every show is brought to you by some kind of sports betting app, and it's just it's too much to me. And then also even into video games, I guess you have like loot boxes and garbage like that we get, and it's just think this is such a stupid idea, and it's just kind of depressing that we have to see every movie as what it makes at the box office instead of like what does it mean as art. Constantly betting and gambling on the Oscars, and like it's fun to predict the Oscars, but I don't think that's the same as gambling and betting and like monetizing every aspect of all that we consume and just looking at everything through this, I don't know, filter of capitalism. Like, oh, well, a movie is only as good as its box office numbers. Like, I definitely don't see that way. Like, it's fun to talk about box office, specifically like Sinners. Oh my god, they had a 6% drop the first weekend, which is literally like never happened before. That is an unheard of box office drop in modern movie history. It's absolutely phenomenal. And even this week, I think it had a really small drop again, maybe 15 to 20% or something like that. So Sinners is still chugging along very well. Thunderbolts, we're going to talk about the box office today because it had an astonishing Thursday night that was very good, but it's just, I don't like this idea of being competitive about box office as fans of movies. Like, that's not what this all needs to be. We should just be celebrating all these works of arts as, I don't know, the things that they are and what they're trying to say, instead of like, yeah, it was a good movie, but it did bad at the box office, so we shouldn't remember it. Like, I don't know. I'm a little tired of the constant box office talking and like I said at the start of my YouTube video, obviously it's been not just a slow start box office wise, I would say, but like movie quality wise in general, it has been a bit of a slow start to the year. January, February is always like that, but even March was a little bit like, not that great. But I think April is really starting to turn things around, and May, now it's, Friday, May 2nd, and we have Thunderbolts tonight. This month is going to be a really good month for movies, and, movie theaters are going to be absolutely massive. Ted Sarandos just last weekend saying that, movie theaters are outdated, and that's such an outdated way to see movies. And yet, what was it? 3 different movies made 20 million plus, and one of them was a re-release in Revenge of the Sith. Absolutely wild. Like, I think we should just continue to celebrate and platform great movies, and specifically smaller movies, give them a chance. Anyways, I'm rambling. I hate this idea. Let's move on to another story that developed this week. We talked about the Oscar rule changes last week. Well, some Oscar voters are developing new techniques to avoid watching movies. They say nobody hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. I feel like nobody hates movies more than Oscar voters. Well, the AV Club put out a report that after the Academy implemented rules to verify voters are watching nominees, the work-averse members of the Academy are developing new methods for lying about what they've seen. Last week, the Academy announced those rules, of course, one of them being that you have to track all the films you're watching through their members-only screening app, which is a really good idea. It's like Letterboxd. You logged exactly what you've been watching. You can rate the movies, but for them, it's more of a cataloging and like forms almost. Also follow me on Letterboxd, KikiJ70. I'll link it at the end of the show. Well, Oscar voters are now developing new ways to avoid the films, so pushing back on these oppressive but enforceable edicts. Voters, presumably trained by a team of high school cheaters, oh my god, this AV Club writer, Matt Shimkowitz, is absolutely tearing into them. So he broke down what this person said. They're pushing back by presumably they're just logging the film to their screening room, hitting mute, or doing something else like just putting it on in the background and leaving the room. There's no penalty for watching the movies on 1.5 speed because an app feature that exists for obvious reasons. So the voters are doing that too. It only needs to say in the app that you watched the movie, but like how you watched it doesn't calculate, and also you don't need to be sitting there watching it. So absolutely depressing. You'd think if you were an Oscar voter, you would be like, okay, I'm going to give all of the nominees a fair shot because I want to vote correctly. And if it's your job, it's honestly not that time consuming. Like, I do this and I have a part-time job. I work like 2 hours a day, but I still watch, 4 or 5 movies a week. I still do content every day on social media, which is like pretty low effort, and I do it for fun. And this is like the most fun I have in the weekend. It's my hobby. But like, if it were my job and I was literally an Oscar voting member, like Kirsten Dunst said, of course I'm going to watch them all. I'm a voter. It just really bothers me, and I feel like they need to do something about the membership body because it's way too big now and it's getting too messy, I think. How do you fix an issue of voters not wanting to watch movies? Like, why be an Oscar voter then? Why do you want to vote for the Oscars and do your duty? Or is it like you're forced to be a voter if you're a part of the members body? I don't understand what the incentive is of only wanting to watch one of the movies and vote for it. You can just support it instead. But let's end on a goofy story. This week, actually, someone that I follow on Twitter was responsible for this. Officer Martinez on Twitter, or at Comic Book Movie Fan. He, on April Fool's Day, put out this thing that Culture Crave and IndieWire all picked up. Well, IndieWire picked it up first. IndieWire took his April Fool's joke as true, where he tweeted that Matt Reeves used a Weeknd song as inspiration for Bruce Wayne's arc in The Batman Part 2, and it went viral. It was literally an April Fool's joke, but IndieWire published it in an article unaware that the quote was fake, and The Weeknd himself even shared it. In The Batman Part 1, obviously he's inspired by Nirvana, and Matt Reeves has spoken about listening to Nirvana while writing the script and that he's inspired by Kurt Cobain. The fact that, the Weeknd being an inspiration for, I don't know, that's not too far-fetched, so I sort of understand IndieWire, but it's been so funny this week seeing Comic Book Movie Fan on Twitter sharing the articles and being like, holy shit, did I do this? Like, I was just kidding. What a goof. IndieWire has since like corrected it, I believe, and everyone has reported it widely that it's just hilarious that this fake quote got out and taken seriously. So why not end on a high note? But today we are going to have a great review. I'm very excited to talk about this movie, the most emotionally in-depth and available movie that we've had from the MCU since Guardians 3 or Wakanda Forever. But remember, non-spoiler, then spoiler section, all the timestamps are below. You can scroll through whatever app you're using or in the show notes or on YouTube, whatever. But let's talk about Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts. Thunderbolts is a 2025 action-adventure film coming in at 2 hours, 6 minutes. It is a Marvel Studios production, of course, directed by Jake Schreier, who did a bunch of episodes of Beef. He did a film called Robot and Frank, as well as another movie called Paper Towns. This is his real, first action film or, big-budget studio film like this, so a really cool transformation. I loved Beef. I thought that was, one of my favorite shows from that year, and it was so much fun, but also emotionally sort of destructive for me, and I loved it. I think he translates a lot of that to this really well. Written by Eric Pearson, who's written a bunch of MCU stuff, not only as head writers, but as rewrites and being a helpful around the place type writer. He's also written Transformers 1, a very funny movie, and Godzilla vs. Kong, as well as Joanna Callow, who wrote BoJack Horseman, Hacks, one of my favorite shows right now, and The Bear, one of my favorite shows ever. Has a budget of $180 million, which isn't insane. That's probably small budget for Marvel movies, but it's actually started really well at the box office. And I know we just talked about we don't need to compare every movie at the box office, but it's doing well. It started with an 11 million Thursday, which is a same opening as Dune Part 2. That's a very promising start, and it's now projecting 80 million for its opening weekend. So strong start box office wise. Reviews very positive, 89% on Rotten Tomatoes with a 95% audience score, 7.8 on IMDb, 68% on Metacritic, 3.8 average on Letterboxd with a 4-star mode. It's getting pretty universal praise. I haven't seen a lot of complaints, honestly, about it, or every bad review that I've seen for it has been yeah, it's fine, versus most of the reviews I'm seeing is oh, this one was actually really good and I connected to it. So very wide praise from everywhere. It's just fun when the big movie of the week is being talked about, how many people are loving it. Sinners, oh, that was such a fun weekend when Sinners came out, because every online presence was just saw Sinners, absolutely loved it. Even The Accountant 2 last week. Synopsis for Thunderbolts. After finding themselves ensnared in a death trap, 7 disillusioned cast-offs must embark on a dangerous mission that will force them to confront the darkest corners of their past. The cast includes Florence Pugh as Yelena Belova / the new Black Widow, I guess we can call her, Sebastian Stan as Bucky Barnes, Julia Louis-Dreyfus as Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, Lewis Pullman as Robert Reynolds / the Sentry / the Void, David Harbour as Alexei Shostakov / Red Guardian, Wyatt Russell as John Walker / US Agent, Hannah John Kamen as Ava Star / Ghost. I never thought she would come back in an MCU movie. Olga Kurylenko as Antonio Dreykov / Taskmaster, and Geraldine Viswanathan as Mel, as well as some fun other little inclusions like Wendell Pierce as Congressman Gary. Chris Bauer is actually from a specific The Office episode where he's from the Rochester office or something like that, where they're trying to get Timothy Olyphant's characters. It's just a really fun cast. My initial thoughts on Thunderbolts, you can probably guess that I really loved this. And I jokingly wrote in my notes, the MCU is back, baby, because how many times have we said that since Endgame, when any project just meets the bar or just sort of pushes the bar a little bit, because the bar has been low since Endgame. But I'm serious. This one feels really different and a really old school Marvel movie. Last night I tweeted, driving home from Thunderbolts, I felt like I was back in 2018 or 2017, where every movie was just so much fun to talk about online, and it wasn't oh, that was a nice change. It was yep, another solid one. I can't wait to watch it again. I've already booked my ticket to see it again on Monday night in IMAX, because I seriously enjoyed this, and there's so much I want to talk about with it, so it might be a longer episode today. Let's start with the performances, of course, and I'm going to do it in order of the cast as they appear on Letterboxd, not in any specific special way. Florence Pugh as Black Widow / Yelena. She is so fantastic in this. I think think every review that you're going to read is probably going to be praising her because she is so special in this. She has an amazing character arc, so much vulnerability. She's also just hilarious. She's really the soul and the heart of this film, and I think she's just a great person to honestly lead the MCU from here on. Like, she is a great hinge to put everything on, and she can really break us into the new chapter of the MCU movie where maybe we get more movies like Thunderbolts, where you don't need to watch anything else and you can sort of just see this film. She's funny, charismatic, honest, so vulnerable and fragile. Obviously, she's great with the action, but my God, she had me choking up. There was a part in this where I was fighting back tears and it was really hitting me. Then we have Sebastian Stan as Bucky Barnes, who we most recently saw in Captain America Brave New World for one scene. Well, honestly, as I say every time, Seb never misses. I said in my Falcon and Winter Soldier episode, he's one of the best MCU castings we've ever had because he has honestly only gotten better over the years. He's so wonderful in this movie. He has his own goals and objectives that he's trying to accomplish in the story, and I like what they're doing with his character, and I sort of like that he takes a back seat in this movie. He's not trying to be the leader of this group. He's just the one that's like, we all got to work together and I need you guys to help me and you're going to do this thing for me. And I really like that it's not like, oh, well, we need Bucky to be the new Captain America. It's like, he's not Captain America. And also him and John Walker have an interesting dynamic that we get in like one scene, I would say. And I like that Sebastian Stan is sort of just easygoing in this film. I wouldn't say he's like, phoning it in at all. No, he is very good in this, and he's kind of taking on this experienced mantle within this team that I think him and David Harbour as these team members. But Julia Louis-Dreyfus as Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, honestly, I don't think we've spoken about this before, but she is such a good casting choice for this role. She's hilarious. She's ruthless. She's just so good. I love that she's basically playing Selena Meyer. Honestly, I really enjoyed every scene with her. She gets to do fun stuff in this, and she has a super good monologue where she's like, growing up, I thought there were good guys and bad guys. Eventually, you realize there's only bad guys and worse guys, and there's just a lot of fun stuff that happens with her in this film. Then we have Lewis Pullman as Robert Reynolds / Sentry / The Void. Fantastic. Probably my second favorite performance other than Florence Pugh. It was originally Steven Yeun who was supposed to be playing the Sentry in The Void, scheduling conflicts. And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Iowa Debris supposed to be in this film as Mel, Julia Louis-Dreyfus's assistant, but it was Geraldine Viswanathan, who I think was a fantastic choice as well. I'm sorry, Steven Yeun. Lewis Pullman is perfect for this role. He blew me away. He's hilarious. He's charming. He's so like little and fragile. Like, I don't know how to explain it. He's like a little mouse in this. He reminds me of Whitaker from The Pit in this movie, where he's just like this little, oh, hey guys. And then he does the Sentry and Void stuff so well. I mean, we'll get into the mental health aspects of this film in a second, but he also just genuinely looked amazing as the Sentry. And I don't think it really matters like what race the character is. I'm sure Steven Yeun would have looked okay, but like, I think just Lewis Pullman has this look about him because of his hair naturally being kind of this length. It just looked really good. And the suit, we do see it. I thought he was fantastic. And him and Florence Pugh have amazing chemistry in this. David Harbour is Alexei Shostakov, Red Guardian. Shocked by how good he is in this. He gets to be a little bit more Hopper from Stranger Things and be a dad to Yelena the entire movie, trying to guide her and bring her spark back. I loved it. He made me choke up as well. One I really want to talk about though is Wyatt Russell as John Walker. I said in the Falcon and Winter Soldier episode, John Walker, extremely underrated character in the MCU, and he proves it again here. He's just such an asshole. Like, he is such a douche to everyone on the team, and he's just so rude and snobby, but I love him because he is clearly broken inside, like all of these people are. Even Hannah John came in as Ava Starr / Ghost. I was surprised by how much I loved her inclusion in this film. She's like, has a lot of funny moments. She's super supportive of the team and actually gets a lot of play here. She doesn't have as big of an arc, but I liked what they did with her character. Overall, like the cast is just fantastic. Everyone's perfect, and I think everyone fits these roles so well. Like, I don't know. I don't think there's ever been really casting issues with the MCU. Everyone is sort of fit to play the roles that they are playing, and I think most of the time it really works, like 8 out of 10 times, I would say. The story and the writing, I have a lot to say about the story and the writing. I thought it was one of the best MCU stories we've had post-Endgame. They set up the story so well. Like, there's this big Washington trial with Valentina, then Bucky's involved, and Gary, the congressman, and she needs to get rid of everything in Oxcorp, and that's how we get our group meeting each other. Valentina sends everyone against each other, like it says in the synopsis, and turns out they're all in a trap, but you can see the dominoes being set up in the story, and it gives us a natural team team up that needs to happen because they all have someone in common that they don't like that tried to kill them. And I think this movie is also a very smart move from Marvel, maybe a rare smart move from the MCU, but let's take a bunch of our B characters that have only been in a couple projects each, really. Like David Harbour has only been in Black Widow. The Ghost character has only showed up in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Same with John Walker, only been in one project. Like a lot of these cast members have only been in one project. I think Florence Pugh is the only one that's been in more than one because she was in Hawkeye as well. So I really liked how they were like, let's just take everyone that we've had sort of left over and we can create a whole new chapter for the MCU. And honestly, if we get this as a team going forward, if these are our main characters that we can kind of focus on a little bit more, I don't hate that. I think a lot of them are very rich character-wise and have a lot about them that's so interesting, and they have such great chemistry and really work well together. And obviously they're showing up in Avengers Doomsday because they were in that chair announcement, and I like how much they're getting to do more. It's also something that we've been begging the MCU to do. I think there's been a lot of like, oh, we need these massive team-up movies that have world or universe-ending multiverse stories, and I've been begging the MCU just stick to these ground-level, concise, like one city, one villain stories like Avengers or even Spider-Man to an extent, I guess, sometimes, like Homecoming, I would say. And that's exactly what this was. It's the most concise and grounded story we've had in a long time from the MCU. It's simply a New York battle. There's only 5 to 10 characters total, and like they vary in how much they're involved or how much background there is and how many character arcs there are. Like it's just so well measured, and I really appreciated how it takes place over one day, and it's so concise and ground level that it was just so refreshing. And you could literally watch this movie without having seen anything else in the MCU, anything else, and you get to know everything you need to know about all these people. Yelena lost a sister, Red Guardian used to work for the Soviet Union, Bucky used to be the Winter Soldier. Like that's all you need to know. John Walker was Captain America. They do such a great time of bringing you into the universe and making you feel like you don't need to do your homework. You can just come, enjoy this movie, spend 2 hours with us, and then you can go on your way. You can come back if you want. And I think it's the smartest thing project-wise that Marvel has done in a few years now. And it's also one of the darkest and most mature stories we've probably ever gotten from Marvel. This is a movie that is purely about mental health, and we're going to jump into the themes in a second, but I was very shocked how they really do take the subject matter seriously. Like, yes, it's a funny movie, but they never undercut something serious happening with a joke. When there's jokes, it always feels like the right time, but it's never like, so that just happened, or any of that Marvel BS we've come to know. They really don't do that here, and I appreciated that so much. And it's just like kind of exceptional writing for MCU standards in general. Like the movie is seriously character driven. It's not universe driven. It's not trying to move us through this multiverse because we have to set up these other 4 movies. This movie's not really setting anything up. It is teasing something fun, but it's not trying to shoehorn in this whole other universe getting started or something like that. And I just love how it's character driven, like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, or even Wakanda Forever was very much not a universe driven film, I would say. It is very much just focusing on Wakanda and the death of T'Challa. So I think those 3 movies are probably the best, maybe the best written of the post-Endgame. But one thing I specifically want to highlight about the script and the writing is they're doing a lot of things we haven't had from Marvel movies in a very long time. Like the heroes actually save civilians and are heroes to the public in this story. It's not just these big battles taking place in the streets where there's no civilians really acknowledging the heroes. There is one funny moment where they're all in a fight and they're all arguing in the street, or they go into this little battle against these soldiers that work for Valentina, and people are just walking by in the street because it's New York and it's like, yeah, this happens every day, whatever. But then like stuff starts to happen in the street that you see in the trailer, and they're actually saving members of the public, which I don't think we get enough of in the MCU in general anymore. And that's why I'm looking forward to Fantastic Four as well. That's why I love this movie so much, and really it just felt emotionally very different from everything we've got in the MCU for a while. I feel like we haven't had public trust of superheroes or public appreciation of superheroes and them just being heroes. Like Wakanda Forever, every part of the story kind of takes place away from the public and away from any heroes. Or even Guardians, I love it because they save children. Or even the Spider-Man movies, he's not really saving members of the public that often. Every time we get these big battles in Marvel movies recently, it's always people running away from the scene scene, and the heroes are never, protecting civilians from the big threat. It's everyone evacuates immediately. We shoot on this big empty lot, and it's just heroes fighting mindless, soldiers from the villain, whether they're beasts or entities or whatever it may be. But this movie, people are actually trapped in the street and can't get away. And I thought that was just such a good thing to highlight, that like, yes, superheroes, they still protect the public and they serve a purpose. And like at one point, Alexei saves a girl, and there's this big piece of a wall that comes down and breaks over his back. And you can feel that stunt, that there is like a fake wall breaking over David Harbour's back. And it feels like, oh wow, that was actually there and it wasn't CGI. And it weirdly, the stunt plays into the emotions of the moment because it feels so real. Like David Harbour is actually, it was probably a doll girl that he's protecting below her, but it feels like a very real moment where David Harbour or his stunt double is not only doing this, but it's like actually our hero interacting with the environment around them. And it does such a great thing. But I want to talk about Jake Schreier specifically and his directing. It is a big step up to go from Beef, Paper Towns, all of these smaller projects. And I don't think it's disrespectful to call them smaller. They're not Marvel Studios projects. But taking on this story was such a fresh thing for the MCU and a great move by them to get this smaller director. And he should be incredibly proud of the work he does here. He makes a real emotionally character-driven film in this big universe that has been crushing under its own weight for the last 5 years by stories that don't really feel like they're mattering, or that we know aren't authentic and can just be shaken up and rebooted in the next film, because all this multiverse stuff, none of it really matters because people can die, people can come back. Versus this entire movie, I felt like there were actual stakes, and like death matters here and people getting hurt matters here, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And there's emotional stakes too, like it feels like people's feelings actually matter. The action is like pretty standard. I don't think the action is necessarily mind-blowing, but I think the emotional effects of the action in this film are very important. There is one action set piece with Bucky, the one in the desert where he's on the motorcycle. I thought that was absolutely brilliant, where he grabs the cable, yanks on it, this car goes flying. I thought that was maybe my favorite action set piece of the film, other than the opening where Yelena parachutes into this building. It was great. I thought all the action was very good, but there was one particular action sequence with, actually no, fuck that. The action is solid all over. I don't think it's necessarily mind-blowing, but I did enjoy it all around, and I think it's very well directed. There is one sequence, and this is my only complaint, other than the action not being like fully mind-blowing. I will say the CGI in one scene with Sentry, I was like, I don't know about that. Very ropey, plasticky, a little bit like, ooh, there's a bit of motion blur / face over him, and there's a little bit of that throughout the movie where like sometimes there's a bit of a blur over the person's face because it's clearly a stunt double and they have to like cut it out. I think there are a little bit of noticeable flaws there, but I don't hate it. I think maybe, they could have done a little bit better, but it's still okay. But Jake Schreier, the movie is so well paced. Tonally, I think it's nailed on. It never feels like it's really slowing down or we don't know where to go from here. It does the comedy, does the emotions, does the action and big stakes really well. But the themes of the film that he and the script writers brought to life, mental health. This movie is all about mental health. The villain is literally the embodiment of bipolar disorder and depression. Yelena's character arc with her mental health in this film, where she is feeling burnt out from work. She's grieving the death of her sister, of course, Black Widow from the Black Widow film. But they talk about grief and burnout and mental health in these really special ways that weigh on you the entire film. And you can see everyone in the team struggling with these problems and finding purpose. I think everyone in their life hits a certain point, and I just really identified with Yelena, where you kind of question, like, what is my purpose here? I'm working, but am I just throwing myself into work and not taking anything from it in my life? Maybe we'll talk more about in spoilers so I can get into specifics, but I absolutely loved everything they did with her. The score by Sun Lux, wow. I loved the score. I listened to it again this morning, and there are some absolutely phenomenal pieces in here, like Yelena's Choice, I Don't See Your Mistakes, and just the title song Thunderbolts. I don't remember any needle drops in the film either, which I appreciate because it is a bit of a crutch in big budget movies now to just throw in needle drops for no reason. I don't actually remember any in this movie. Prove me wrong. I think every musical piece in this really works emotionally, and I loved it. It's one of the better Marvel scores that we've had since Endgame. I would say this, Guardians 3, Spider-Man No Way Home has a pretty decent score, but I mean, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, Ludwig Göransson, oh my dear God, that thing is magic. But this was really good as well. I think the third act of Thunderbolts, though, is very much a step up from anything we've seen in the MCU because it is so different in what it's trying to talk about and what it's doing, actually. It's not just this huge fighting of thousands of soldiers bashing in robots and brains and stuff like that, whatever, that, you know, you kind of feel weightless because it's all CGI. There is something that they're actually trying to do here that I really loved, and we're going to talk about in the spoiler section, but it brought me to tears, and I just really appreciated that they tried to do something different. But here is my ranking of the MCU films post-Endgame. In last, Ant-Man Quantumania. Then we have Captain America Brave New World, Black Widow, Thor Love and Thunder, Eternals, The Marvels, Shang-Chi, Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, Wakanda Forever, Deadpool and Wolverine, Far From Home, No Way Home, Thunderbolts in second, with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 in first. That's how much I loved this movie. It is my second favorite post-Endgame movie, and you guys know how much I love Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, so that's a very high bar to meet, but I just really appreciated how sure of itself everything about this production felt. There were no parts of this movie where I was like, oh, that's a reshoot. Oh, that's definitely something they added in. There was one part where I was like, is David Harbour wearing like a buzz cut bald cap type thing because he has a buzz cut in this film? But I was like, oh, his head looks extremely large there. Was that a reshoot? Maybe, but there were no glaring Marvelisms about this where I was like, oh, that feels cheap and reshot. And I think that's maybe a product of post-COVID and post-strikes that the MCU is now able to line up their projects, be sure of what order they're going to put things in, and if you're going to tie in the movies so heavily, then you need to make sure what the story of the overall universe is going to be. And this movie is not really concerned with the overall universe, which is what makes it so great. And it's an effective movie outside of the strikes and having to reshuffle things. They mention briefly other events, obviously, of the universe because they're giving backstory, and they talk about President Ross in Captain America Brave New World, but nothing major, not showing footage from other movies or whatever. So I don't know. All right, let's get into 2 stars and a wish before we do spoilers. Star number 1, the performances. Honestly, so much emotional availability to these characters that I just relate to them all, and they're people just like us. They don't feel like these big gods and monsters that we have nothing in common with. They are just normal people that punch and kick their way out of these situations, and they have issues like the rest of us where they're feeling burnt out, suffering from mental health issues, or whatever. I really loved the performances, specifically Lewis Pullman and Florence Pugh. Second, stunts and production. This felt like an actual movie. Everything about this movie felt like it was shot in camera, in person, and things actually blowing up and dropping and, you know, backgrounds being there. It didn't feel like we were in a box on a set. You don't know how much that does for a film's enjoyment because it is so annoying when you're watching something and you can be like, oof, no way that was shot in an actual street, or you can see how blurry that background is. My wish, I maybe wish we could have got more Sentry, not necessarily the Void. I think there is a decent amount of the Void in this, but I wish there was a little bit more of Lewis Pullman in the Sentry costume and being the Sentry. It's such a concise movie and it's so tight schedule wise, like it takes place over one day, or timeline wise, not schedule wise, that I understand why there is so little of it, but I wish we did see a little bit more Sentry. But overall, Thunderbolts should be the new blueprint for the MCU, not necessarily like these team movies, but just making movies that are smaller, character driven, and actually about stuff. Stop making projects that exist solely to sell other MCU projects. This was the most fun I've had watching the MCU, in theaters at least, since Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Deadpool and Wolverine was fine, and I enjoyed it a lot, but I didn't think about it once after. Guardians 3 and this are the only movies in theaters for the MCU that I'm like, I want to watch it right away. I've already bought my ticket for next week. Go watch Thunderbolts. You don't need to see any other MCU project, and I think you can enjoy it. It's a 4 to 5 stars, but let's get into spoilers. All right, spoilers for Thunderbolts. Well, you will notice I didn't really talk about Taskmaster that much. I was not shocked they killed her within 5 minutes of her being on screen. Her very first scene, she gets a bullet in the head from Ghost, and I actually didn't hate it. I was like, yeah, that's fine. What was she really going to offer? And I actually think one more character on the team maybe could have thrown off the dynamics that they had so well implanted, specifically because I don't really think we have that much, commitment to the Taskmaster Taskmaster character, and it's another character with a shield who kind of does the same thing as everybody else, so I wasn't that beaten up about it. But let's get into some bigger spoilers. Alexei and Yelena's convo at the start of the film versus the end of the film. At the start, it's in the very first trailer they ever put out, where she goes to his house and he's clearly like pretty unemployed and just a limo driver now, and she's like, "Are you fulfilled?" And he's like, "What's going on with you?" And you can tell that she is going through some stuff in her life where she's not really sure. I don't know, maybe she's just depressed is the best way to put it, I guess. Versus the end of the film, I loved Alexei's speech. Honestly, shook me to my core and I was choked up. Him talking about, I want my little girl with her light back. Your light has dimmed. I can see that, and you're going through a tough time. We all have these issues. We've all done bad things in our past, but it doesn't make you a bad person now. You can move on. You deserve to be happy. All that really great stuff. And, Alexei being like, "I don't see your mistakes. I see that little girl." And it's actually funny. The whole reason they're called the Thunderbolts is because that was her soccer team as a child. They were like whatever the city they are, Thunderbolts. And Yelena wanted to play goalie. So that way, when everyone made mistakes, she could still support them and be the last line of defense. And she wants to support people who make mistakes. And that's her whole character arc in this film, supporting Bob, supporting Wyatt Russell as U.S. soldier. And I just loved everything they did with Yelena. And I think it just proves that Florence Pugh is the one who can lead the MCU going forward. And I kind of hope they do, because she's the most emotionally sophisticated or vulnerable or complex character we've had in a little bit in the MCU. And I think there's so many interesting things you can do with her from here on out. And I think they do a very clever thing here screenplay wise to introduce everyone's sort of character arcs or their emotional stakes in this story. The Void's power is he invades your mind and takes you to your darkest place in your life. So John Walker sees himself like being a bad parent before his wife and child left. And then Yelena sees the first girl that she ever was responsible for the death of, that she had to lure this girl into a forest when she was younger, and the little girl was executed, and that was like a test of hers. It's just, I really thought that was an interesting way of establishing everyone's emotional arcs or the stakes of the story without like heavy-handed what you would get in, say, Rebel Moon. I don't know why I thought of this right away, that, oh, well, how do we set up everyone's background? They're all going to sit around and tell each other stories about their backgrounds, and we're going to watch everything in slow motion. It's like, no, these emotional backgrounds are being forced on us by the Void, and the villain of the story, he is infiltrating everyone's minds, and he is seeing their deepest, darkest secrets and the mistakes that they have made, as well as Yelena going into the Void and seeing Bob's past, who, my God, what a dark past. And it's seriously some of the darkest subject matter, again, that we've had in the MCU. Like I said in non-spoilers, the fact that, Bob, when he was younger, his father was abusive, and his mom actually blamed him that he's just making everything worse, and that's why he turned to meth and drugs, and he was an addict. So I like that this film talks about addiction, because I don't think we've ever had meth talked about in the MCU, but he was a meth addict. And there's even one like slightly funny action set piece towards the end of the film when they're going through the Void and Bob's head, where they're fighting him in a chicken costume when he was on meth and his job was spinning a sign. And I just thought it worked really well. And even I was surprised they showed us Valentina's background, that we see her as a child when her father was killed, and she's from Italy, I believe. I love that too. But let's talk about one underrated moment: Bucky exposing that Walker's family left. Walker is such a confident asshole in this film, and U.S. Agent John Walker is one of my favorite characters that we've had post Endgame, and I love that they're kind of ruthless to each other in this film, our team of misfits. They all say shit to each other that everyone in my theater was like, ooh, like Yelena being like, yeah, well, John Walker, you're a bad parent, or whatever it is, or like, you murdered an innocent guy in the streets. Bucky calls him out like, don't act all fake with me, Walker, something like that. I know your wife and kid left you. And then after that is said, Yelena immediately looks at John Walker in this really like sensitive and understanding way, where it's a really vulnerable and touching moment where John Walker locks eyes with her, and you can see he's like, please, let's not talk about that. And like, I know, and you can see the embarrassment in his face. I don't think anyone else in the team really reacts. It's just this really touching moment between Yelena and John Walker that sort of blew me away. I was like, whoa, that was such a quick and vulnerable moment in this like really powerful scene of Bucky giving everyone this chance to, overcome their issues. But anyway, some more spoiler moments that we can talk about. There are 0 cameos in this film. Absolutely 0. Not a single one. There's little fun references, like Valentina is holding this auction for Avengers Initiative, like a fundraising thing where she's selling a bunch of stuff like Chitauri things from the Avengers movie. And I like that. I think that's okay with all these Easter eggs and referencing the larger universe. But I loved that there wasn't like, oh, we see a portal opening, someone walks through, and it's blah, blah, blah from that movie in 2002. None of that. And it shows you can make a good Marvel movie with zero cameos, zero fan service, absolutely none of that here. And of course, there is a place for that. There's a place for fun fan service moments that it's like, oh, that's from that movie that we're referencing. And it's a good reset before the Avengers movies where it's just going to be that for 4 hours over 2 movies. One of my favorite moments of the movie, the crowd cheering in the street for the Thunderbolts. Like I said in non-spoilers, that they are actually saving civilians. Well, they're successful and everyone cheers for them. And I feel like we haven't got enough of that in Marvel stuff recently, of just these like feel-good hero stories where they're doing good things and we have things to cheer about. It touched me and I loved that. But let's talk about, I don't know, maybe the post-credit scenes and what this means for the MCU going forward, as well as the Thunderbolts asterisks, what the asterisk means, because we finally get an answer. Well, I just want to talk about the quality of the post-credit scenes in general here. I love that the first one was a funny one and the second one was a big one setting up the future. That's how Marvel movies used to do it, not just introduce some random useless character that we'll probably never see again, like Hercules in Thor Love and Thunder, one of the most pointless post-credit scenes ever, or introducing Blade in Eternals. That really worked. I love that the first one was just David Harbour at the grocery store and he's finally on the Wheaties box and, you know, he's grown his hair out. He's got a nice mustache now. He's looking healthy and trim because he's a new Avenger now. I guess I can say that out loud because it's spoilers. And he's trying to get the lady to like notice him on the cereal box and she puts it back on the display like down the aisle. I thought that's a perfect mid-credit scene. Give us something little to giggle about. That's what I miss about Marvel movies, is not taking these post-credit scenes so seriously that we need to introduce a new character right away. No, give us a funny one or like a little one that wraps up something, and then give us another that's setting up the future of the MCU. Guardians did this really well. The mid-credit scene being Peter Quill talking about mowing the lawn of a lady in the neighborhood and being like, oh, I don't want to do that or whatever. And then the second post-credit scene being the new Guardians. That was great. This movie, first one is David Harbour, Red Guardian in the grocery store. Second one is them as the Avengers, because they are the new Avengers. That is what the actual title of this film is, I guess. So the second post-credit scene, there's a lot of things to take from it. First of all, they are in a copyright battle with Sam Wilson, who is establishing the actual Avengers. A lot of people theorizing that they'll be called the Mighty Avengers, and then our crew will be called the New Avengers, and that's going to be a point of contention in Avengers Doomsday, is we have 2 Avengers teams going against each other, going against the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. So we not only get that, but then they establish that they've been the New Avengers for 14 months now. They've bought the tower in New York. That's where the New Avengers are operating from, and Valentina owns the team. They're doing tons of media stuff because the credits are just all these different photos and magazine covers and stuff like that, which I really loved. But then also there's something going on in space that Yelena is talking about, and there's, I don't know, these space events or something, weird space events that they're talking about. That's when we get the Fantastic Four ship entering into the atmosphere. And I actually had that moment spoiled for me by this movie. In the credits, when they're talking about all the music that's involved, they list the Fantastic Four theme, and I was like, oh, okay, so this next post-credit scene is either setting up Fantastic Four or the Avengers. It was setting up the Avengers and how probably Fantastic Four is going to end, of them coming to the new Earth, or they're sending like a recon beacon or something like that. But anyways, I thought the second post-credit scene was really great. I like that they're all glammed up as the new Avengers now. The wigs are definitely noticeable, and you can tell that Jake Schreier did not direct it, which he openly admitted today. He said, I was there when it was filmed. I can say that it comes from the set of a production that might be starting production right about now. Avengers Doomsday, of course, but he didn't direct the second post-credit scene. Very obvious because it looks completely different from the rest of the movie. All of our characters look completely different, like they came in like 2 days ago. All of their haircuts are different. All their hair is darker and they're very clearly in wigs. They all have different costumes, of course, but they have like the comic accurate Thunderbolt costumes or the new Avengers costumes, which I absolutely loved. It was just a fun post-credit scene that I was like, oh, I'm excited for another Marvel project. I can't remember the last time that happened, and I'm excited for Fantastic Four. So the asterisk is not only what they're calling themselves during this movie, and it's like a temporary name that they're going with during the movie because it's Yelena's soccer team, and I love how Red Guardian is so fired up by that name, like the Thunderbolts. Yes, it's his great name, cool name. And that's so much fun that it's like, oh, that's your soccer team as a kid. I love that. Great idea. But it's actually just a placeholder name because the end of the movie, which I thought was a great ending for it, that they are now the new Avengers. And it's a fun, like, we don't know about it. They don't even know about it. Valentina just like takes a spur of the moment thing. And it doesn't feel like it's trying to set up some big other movie. It just feels like it's a fun thing that they're being thrown into that can lead us into a new chapter of the MCU. And that's a lot of this movie. None of it feels like it's trying to force us into this new chapter. It all just feels very natural and not trying to be stuck under the pressure of the rest of the universe. I liked how separate it was. And there's just a lot of really great stuff that you can take from this movie, whether it's mental health discussions or addiction discussions and trauma, blaming yourself for bad things that happened in your past and not thinking you're worthy of, happiness in your adult life, or just work burnout in general. There's so much great stuff about this movie that I was like, oh, this is actual human emotions that we can relate to, and we haven't had this in a Marvel movie in a while. But I think that's all I have for spoilers. Marvel Studios Thunderbolts, 4 to 5 stars. I'm seeing it again. My second favorite Marvel movie post Endgame. It was a fantastic time at the movies, and let's get into what else I watched. Alrighty, what else I watched? I have 5 movies, 6 shows, and 2 books to talk about. I'll start with the books, and they're sort of one story overall because it's 2 volumes of The Green Lantern, The Sinestro Corps War, written by Jeff Johns. I've spoken about it last week on social media, and this Sunday you'll see a new video for Volume 2. I loved it. I've read 1 or 2 Green Lantern stories so far, and these 2 were my favorite by far of the 4. It's such a fun story that has so many Green Lantern characters, but it never feels like it's sort of crushing under the weight of having thousands of characters in the story. Like I read Civil War and Secret Invasion a couple weeks ago, and it felt like at times there's a lot of characters here, and I don't think all of them really are necessary, versus in the Green Lantern stories, I was like, oh, there's so many characters here, but the stakes of the story feel big enough that it needs to happen, and everyone is getting their own things to do, and it's a lot of fun. I love all the different heroes that we get to see, and it's not just Hal Jordan being the big Green Lantern. So I think next week I'm going to start reading the New Avengers. I have 2 books that I just bought that are New Avengers off of Facebook Marketplace, and a third called The New Avengers Illuminati. So those might be the next 3 that we do over the next couple weeks. But yeah, Green Lantern, The Sinestro Corps War, Volume 1 and 2 were great. Would totally recommend. Let's move into TV shows. Hacks Season 4, Episode 4. We finally got Deborah hosting her first late night episode, and then she gets injured at a gay club, dancing in a cage, hitting her head because she does a popper by accident, and I loved it. Hacks is just so emotionally rewarding to watch, and it feels like a nice warm hug every week, followed by a very strong slap from Deborah Vance at times. But I spoke about it a little bit in my YouTube video, how just funny the show is and how intelligently written it is, and that it speaks on so many different subject matters that media is going through right now with cancel culture, or forgetting about different demographics or whatever it may be, and just writing and creativity in general. I loved it. But let's talk about Andor Season 2. I've watched the first 6 episodes. Of course, we are getting 3 per week. I'm gonna save a bit of my opinion because later this month we're gonna do a full season review. I think that'll be in 2 weeks. All I'm gonna say is it is phenomenal storytelling. It's genuinely just as good as Season 1, maybe even better. I love how they're talking about trauma and rebellion and colonialism, and it's just, oh my god, Tony Gilroy is a fucking genius, and Andor is maybe the best Star Wars thing we've ever got, other than Empire Strikes Back, which I still think is the best Star Wars movie. As for The Last of Us Season 2 Episode 3, definitely a slower episode and way more of a bringing our world together after a certain death in Episode 2, and I appreciated all of that. I could see why some people don't like it because it is so different from the game right now, but I think they're laying a lot of seeds, because you have to remember that Game 2 is going to be split over Season 2 and Season 3, so it's going to be a slower development, and I don't think it's as good as Season 1, but I still think it's very enjoyable for someone who hasn't played the games and only knows loosely what the narrative is, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here. I think Bella Ramsey, they're just absolutely killing it every week. Isabella Merced is just phenomenal as Dina, and so funny and just charming, and the two of them are just so cute together and have such an interesting relationship with a will they won't they type thing. Now let's talk about The Rehearsal Season 2 Episode 2, maybe one of the most mind-blowing episodes of television I have ever seen. Nathan Fielder setting up this entire rehearsal just to spite Paramount for deleting an episode of his about Summit Ice and the Holocaust was kind of wild, and I can't believe how he depicted Paramount in this episode. I know if you haven't seen the rehearsal, this probably sounds like he did what? How is Paramount Plus like Nazi Germany? Well, if you watch the episode, you'd be surprised because it is absolutely hilarious, and it's just so fascinating how much of a mystery Nathan Fielder is. Like, it's so hard to tell what in the show is real, what's fake, even in interviews in real life. Like, he's never really himself and just like talking openly, and it's so interesting trying to decipher what his persona is or who he is as a person in general. Like, he's so, I don't know, mysterious and just a question mark. He is the human embodiment of a question mark, but The Rehearsal is one of the best shows ever. Also, The Studio, episode 6 and episode 7 this week were honestly, it's just TV is so good right now. TV and movies are good right now. I'll say it. I'm loving everything I'm watching at the moment because The Studio, they had this gala dinner episode where Matt goes to this like charity event with a doctor that he's dating, and they try to say like, oh, movies and art don't matter. Like, TV is all that matters right now. And Matt is just like, Matt is being such an asshole, but I completely agreed with him the entire episode. I was like, yeah, art matters. And he just keeps being like, you guys do this amazing work about what's in every single hospital room, a screen where people watch movies and television and engage with art. And he goes like, he breaks his finger, falls on a table, has to get taken away in a paramedic. And I love his final words and being like, and you know what's going to be on the wall? A TV. And it's just like, I love how committed he was. Episode 7 was just a fantastic take on the loopholes and mental hurdles that we're going through with representation and casting of like, wait, is it racist to cast this person as this, or is it racist to not cast them as this because are we erasing them? And just like how many crazy conversations it goes to. I'm speechless of The Studio. Finally, Survivor, season 48, episode 10, worst episode of the season by far. Star went home and it was honestly a snooze fest. The most boring Survivor episode we've probably had in a few seasons, and I'm a little worried about the end of the season. Like, last week it was fun with David and The Blind Side, but I'm a little worried we're just gonna walk to a loyalty finale with Eva, Joe, and like Shaheen. Eva takes home the whole season, and it's just gonna be boring, strong-arming everyone that's not in your main alliance. I'm worried, but let's jump into movies. All right, well, I finally got around to watching Bones and All, Luca Guadagnino's film from 2022. I'm not really sure why I never got to it. I think the whole cannibalism aspect was a little bit of a turnoff for me, but it blew my mind. And I watched it with my girlfriend, and I told her beforehand that there was cannibalism, like that's what the movie is about, just because I didn't want us to start it and then her be like shocked by what was happening. And within 5 minutes, when she first bites that girl's finger at the sleepover, my girlfriend instantly turned to me and was like, I almost wish you didn't tell me because that would have been so shocking, because it is just so sudden in the movie. Like, holy shit, she's sniffing her, and I thought it was like out of attraction, but she just bites her finger. I had never seen it before, like I said, and I absolutely loved it. Like, I actually went crazy for it. It was so good. It's not only a gorgeously shot film, but like, holy shit, the subject matter is so dark, but it's cannibalism, but you can kind of apply it to so many other things like mental health, sexuality, or just anything in general where we kind of look down on people for having things that they do, and how we look down on people in those communities, and how social outcasts can actually band together, but even then there's danger in them banding together, and sometimes they have conflict amongst themselves. But it's not only a great story, but it's like fantastic performances. I thought the music was so good. Like, blew my mind. I was seriously shocked. There's one quote from it that there's life before Bones and All, and then there's after, and I was like, well, isn't that the truth in my letterbox? I loved it. 4.5 stars. Then this week I watched the Star Wars prequels because I didn't have time to get to the theater and watch Revenge of the Sith because I was so busy editing the YouTube video. I was like, I don't want to rush it and just have to go to theaters, even though it would have been really fun because that was actually the first Star Wars movie I ever saw in theaters. 2005. I was 5 years old, and I absolutely loved it. I remember seeing the Darth Vader stuff for the first time. It was kind of crazy. But anyways, Phantom Menace, honestly, not as bad as I remember. Watching it, I was like, there's actually some things I'm taking from this, and I think now, given everything that's happened in the world, all the trade stuff and like tariffs and trade negotiations, isn't that far-fetched? What crystal ball did George Lucas have when he wrote this movie. Also, Duel of the Fates is like one of the best parts of the movie, of course. I gave it 3 stars. Then Attack of the Clones, probably my least favorite Star Wars movie ever, even over Rise of Skywalker. I hate it. I don't hate it. Like, I don't hate any of the Star Wars movies. It's just every time I watch it, it just feels more painful. And there's some loving stuff in there. Like, I love the relationship stuff, but it's so stiff and it's meh. I don't know. It's 2 stars for me. But Revenge of the Sith, probably the best one of the prequels, to be honest. Like, I gave it 3 stars as well, like Phantom Menace, but I think there's so much more about the story that's really heartbreaking, and like Anakin's betrayal is one of my favorite composed pieces of the prequel trilogies. Honestly, maybe ever in Star Wars. There's like the Hoth battle. Obviously, there's Duel of the Fates. I do like the prequels. I think they're bad movies, but I really love them and they're special to me because I grew up watching them and loving them. 3 stars. So the prequels, I would give 3 stars, 2 stars, 3 stars. But then I also watched the new Netflix film Havoc, directed by Gareth Evans. I posted a little review on my social medias. I don't know. I don't care. The CGI and action is all just too much for me. I've never seen his Raid movies. I've only seen people loving them online and being like, the Raid is so much fun. Like, everyone should check it out. So I might go and check that out because it's not under the Netflix label or whatever. So it might be a little bit more fun, or maybe it is. But I thought Tom Hardy is not good in this movie. I thought the characters are all just one dimensional and we don't really care about any of them. The guns all have 180,000 bullets in each of them. No one ever reloads. I counted maybe 2 or 3 times in the film that people actually reload their gun. And I was like, what is this movie? They're going by the 24 logic where Jack Bauer never had to reload his guns. But it was not a waste of time, but I'm never going to think about the movie again. 2.5 stars. As for this weekend, what I'm watching, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. I want to watch it this weekend because I need to do the last 3 movies of the series before I see The Final Reckoning, which I have my ticket for. Then on Monday, I'm seeing Thunderbolts again in IMAX. And on Tuesday, I'm seeing The Legend of Ochi and The Shrouds, the David Cronenberg movie. I don't think I've ever seen a David Cronenberg movie, so maybe I'll try and see like The Fly before I go and see that. But lots of good movies coming out. Also, TV is just like banging right now. I couldn't really talk about The Last of Us and Andor too much in what else I watched today because I want to save my thoughts for not only my social media reviews on Mondays for The Last of Us, but really for the podcast, because I am going to do episodes about The Last of Us Season 2 and Andor Season 2 because it's just like prestige television that I'm loving. But I think that's it for what else I watched. And in fact, I think that's going to do it for episode 68, Thunderbolts. Guys, I had a lot of fun. I really, really, really loved Thunderbolts. I think it's like just a solid return to form. It's not mind-blowing or life-changing, but it's just such a comforting and enjoyable movie that I think is going to be a very popular MCU rewatch film. Not just for myself, but I think for a lot of MCU fans. It's going to be one of the ones that you're coming to over and over again because there's just so much you can enjoy about the universe and these characters. But as always, please rate and review the show 5 stars wherever you get your great podcasts like Watcher of All Things, whether it is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or Acast. We are, of course, an Acast-produced show. If you're on the YouTube channel, please leave a like, subscribe, comment. What are you watching this week? What did you think of Thunderbolts? How would you rank the MCU post-Endgame? What's been your favorite thing? What's been your least favorite thing? Or just comment your entire ranking list. I'd love to see it. Also, go check out my favorite TV shows of 2025 so far video, which is on my channel. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can email me, watcherofallthings@gmail.com, or find me on social media. Instagram and Threads are @watcherofallthings. The TikTok account is @watcher.of.all.things. And you can follow my personal letterbox account, KikiJ70. That's KIKIJ70. Drop a comment on one of my reviews telling me you found me through the show and I will follow you back. Let's build a little community. Next week, Fight or Flight, the new Josh Hartnett movie where he's trapped on a plane with assassins. I'm actually really excited to see it. They played the trailer before one of my movies this week and I was like, that looks really dumb and fun. So it's going to be a fun one. But as for now, thank you all so much for listening. This has been a blast talking about Thunderbolts. Let me know what you thought below. Take care of yourselves and I will see you in the next one.